Welcome to a new episode of Incongruent.
Of
We are
course,
season.
Arjun, you're interrupting me. What is this? We're starting a new season and you're the big boss? Okay, you be the big boss. Go for it. Go for it. You be me and I'll be you.
Well, we're back after a good night's break, and season 5 is back, and we feature everyone who has revolutionized AI. And today, joining us on the very first episode is Galvin Widjaja, who is the founder and CEO of Lauretta AI.
So if you are appreciating all topics on AI and really good interviews, sometimes with Arjun.
Oh, please, thank you. Thank you
You're-
so much for that, Steve.
You're welcome. Then tune in and just subscribe, like, and comment where it's possible. We really appreciate your comments. Arjun, are we ready to roll?
We're all good, and let's do it.
If your teeth are in, let's go.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new season of the Incongruent podcast, season 5. It's a full new lineup, and today we are joined by Galvin Widjaja, who is the founder and CEO of Lauretta AI, a privacy first computer vision company that helps organizations understand human behavior in physical spaces without relying on identity and biometrics. Galvin's unconventional journey into AI began not in a lab, but behind a counter of a quick service restaurant that he ran once for his father in Singapore. After early career stints in consulting, banking, and tech, a pivotal decision to reconnect with his estranged father led him to managing 3 migrant serving restaurants. Born in Singapore and raised partly in Indonesia, Galvin grew in an entrepreneurial household that saw both massive growth and total collapse. Those early lessons in volatility, resilience, and human complexity now inform his mission to build AI that doesn't just react, it understands. Galvin, welcome to the show. And how are you doing today?
Hey Arjun, yeah, I'm doing really well today. It is a very exciting time to be in the AI space, and it's a lot of people talk about AI in a commercial way. I think the thing that's really exciting about AI is that it is now kind of taking very meaningful steps in terms of its increasing understanding of the world. And every point of understanding is a new data point. And I think data is a little bit of a narrative that's gone through different parts of my life through very different things. And every new data point is an awakening of a different industry and a different means of work. And I think that's a big part of our world that we're in right now.
Amazing. So, Galvin, just to begin with, could you introduce yourself by sharing that insights from your non-linear journey from consulting and finance to running restaurants and now leading an AI startup?
Yeah, so I am fortunate to live a full and maybe slightly different life from the average AI founder. So my parents, my mother's side was contractors, so physical contractors. They built building. They built old 1960s style army camps, which are kind of like what you see in MASH, the aluminium foil semicircle barrack style buildings. And my dad, from my dad's side of the family, was in the restaurant business. And it was not the high end restaurant business, it was the 45-cent fried noodles in Jakarta restaurant business, which is the best kind for sure, right? And so that's kind of what I started with. I wasn't a very good student, but I had a very unique break in my life. I had a really big lucky break. When I was 9 years old, I was selected to be part of a program in Singapore called the Gifted Education Program. And essentially it's a program selected by IQ and nothing else. And the best thing about IQ is that nobody can test it well. And so they can say that even though your exam grades are terrible, which they were, I still was in the same band because they haven't updated the IQ number, right? So I was in a good class for many years, despite being absolutely trash student, and from two families that had no education, no emphasis on education whatsoever. And during that time, I moved into a more and more technical part of education. Right? I started to do science and really love math. That was where I was naturally inclined to. But at the same time, what ended up happening was that I had an epiphany just before choosing my major that I wanted to do something like what my parents did which was what my grandparents did which was to be an entrepreneur. And so I took a business degree at the start of my university days in 2007, and I made immediately after I did that, I regretted it immensely because it was none of the things that I was good at. So being good at technical things do not allow you to explain what you do, right? A lot of business degrees is, I think, is communication and understanding of the world. I didn't know any of that. And so I became a quant, the most technical possible business degree you can get, which is essentially high-speed trading, how to build trading algorithm models, high-speed trading models. And I was very fortunate in that because 10 years down the line, the same mathematical structures of quant finance, which is matrix multiplication, became the foundation for AI in 2017, a full decade later. And that's kind of what happened with my life. I started in very stable jobs. So I did 5 years in management consulting, and then I was poached into a client, as many management consultants do, to go into banking. I did that for another 5 years. And in that time, a couple of things happened. My family divorced, and my dad had secretly, from Indonesia, started a restaurant chain in Singapore to kind of be closer to his kids. And then he lost his visa. And then he told me one day, "Hi, Galvin, I haven't talked to you in a long time, but I need you to sign some papers for me, and you need to take over a restaurant chain." And so I took over a restaurant chain. I did that every evening. And just like a lot of the restaurant chains run like this, things were very iffy. It was kind of on the border of legal, and there were a lot of dependents and people who were the best cooks, right? I always say come from two places. One is they are grandmas and grandpas, right? This is where you get an old timey feel. And the top big kitchen chefs in the world are often found in prison. And that may sound really terrible, but it's actually a natural extension of what you would have heard in Kitchen Confidential, right? Which is that you always hear about kitchen crews hanging out together and taking drugs together. So this is the reason why they're in prison. So that's why we hire from these places. And so I had to take it over because you cannot have a place like this run by itself. And that was the start of my journey. That journey allowed me to go from digital data, which is where everybody lived, and to move into the physical world of data. And so while most of the AI founders in the world are people in the technical space looking at how to expand the digital realm, I had taken the steps to migrate my data expertise into the physical realm, take over the restaurant chain. And I took the same thread, digital physical data, and I've expanded it into what the business is today.
That's fantastic. So you weren't just a techie building technology for technical sake. You actually had a problem. You were identifying problems, and you were able to apply your technical background to affect those problems. And fantastic. And I'm assuming that's where Lauretta came from. Could you perhaps now just explain what Lauretta does, or if that's not too big a jump from the street shop to the AI machine?
You know, I think one of the things, I know I always spend a lot of time talking about my history, and one of the reasons for that is because I think it is almost my responsibility to tell you that the people behind some of what can often be called the most soulless technologies are real human beings. And what Lauretta is a company that is used by people like the police and the TSA, as well as the retail spaces, so large buildings, to predict human intent. And human intent means that the technology's final aim is to guess what you want and what you are thinking. And what is the path, and what does Lauretta do to do that? Lauretta's fundamental technology is the ability to do non-biometric tracking across CCTV cameras. That is to say, if I see, it's essentially we decided that CSI should be a real technology. That is to say, if I see like a little photo of like your shoes next to your socks, and then I see another photo of your shoulder, I'm like, this is a picture of the same person as that. He's walking the same way and his style is the same. And I can do that right now with a 95 to 98% accuracy across like 250,000 people walking through a shopping mall at the same time. So every single person has a consistent journey. And once we have the journey, your behavior through the mall, we then add information on the things that you do at every time I see you, where you are looking, and the places that you pause, and the people that you're with, and the people that you're friendly with, versus the guy that you're kind of pushing out of the way because he's standing in front of you and the TV screen, and taking all of that information and then guessing to some extent whether you are there for the purpose of being there or you're there for something else. And security is the industry of inconsistent purpose. So you are where you are not supposed to be, or you are there for a reason they are not supposed to be there for. And retail is a business of understanding the level of desire behind your purpose. That is to say, I bought a $5 watch, but I would have bought a $10 one if the $10 one was good. And so the same technology is used across multiple physical spaces by property managers and governments across the world right now.
I'll ask a follow-up on that one then. So this is, I'm assuming, what we mean by computer vision, is it?
So by computer vision very simply is the idea of taking images through a camera screen and interpreting the data in a different way. Computer vision has been around for something like 80 years. And for the last 60 or 70 years, it has largely been driven by identifying of phenomena. And so by identifying a phenomena, it kind of means like when somebody is moving through a screen, but if I take that screen and I reduce it to just 10 pixels, and let's say I'm wearing a red shirt, what I'll see is I'll see a red dot moving across the screen because that is me. And so it's like red dot moving across the screen in a way that's very human-like, probably a person walking. That's kind of what computer vision has looked like. Deep learning AI, computer vision, so 2017 onwards, has largely been driven by by detection of things. And so this is a person, and then it goes deeper and says this is a white male, or it could be this is a person walking versus running. And so it starts to identify and classify behaviors. And so that's kind of the basis of the technology. And then you fast forward now to 2022 and 2023 with ChatGPT and all of that. And now it's like, this is a person, and these are the 17 things he did. And why do you think he's there? And then maybe I'll say he's searching, or he's purchasing, he's got no time, so he's gone directly to the shop that he wanted to go to and he bought something he left, versus he's shopping and he's browsing. And maybe you would think to yourself, maybe a browsing person is more susceptible to marketing. Like a doom scroller is much more interesting than a person who is just opening that one YouTube channel that he wants to watch and leaves, right?
Cool. You know, sorry. You've recently received backing from a good amount of organizations. What is driving this interest to get the support from Department of Air Force's AFREX program, TSA in Texas? You guys are amongst the top 10 in Australia's Market Accelerator program, a project from Homeland Security and more.
So I think that I think one thing about our business, I think that kind of drove this, I think it's very interesting. So we won our first Homeland Security contract in 2019 when we had no US citizens and no US presence. And Homeland Security, which is essentially the ministry that does security in the United States, that kind of oversees things like the police forces, why would they give it to a organization that was at a point in time based in Singapore? And I think a lot of that is vision based more than technology based. So I think we have, over the last 10 years or so, AI could be seen as a continuum, but I think it is more wise to think of AI as having gone through three specific stages. There is a stage of inference where AI supports an inference. Maybe that is a B, 75% chance it's a B, right? And then it went through a point of classification. That is when you completely trust the AI's ability to decide that it's a B, and then you can now automate based on if B, then if bee, then find honey or whatever, right? So you have now moved away from AI is supporting you to AI as a data input. And then there was that third point where because AI is an input, now the next question was, can we aggregate AI inputs because they are automated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we aggregate them and create higher order thinking? And so we believed, even when we were pitching this in 2019, that AI will inevitably reach higher order thinking. And so because of that, in many ways, they decided that we were the appropriate people to build these projects. And yeah, it was really interesting because we are not a company that invents, we're not open AI, right? We do not build the frontier models. We just believe that a frontier model would be around in 2014. And we operated that way. And that's kind of how we work.
Yeah, so
All right.
that's really quite interesting because we're seeing lots of these different technologies that are coming out, but they only have one use.
Yeah.
And once you finish with that use, or ChatGPT or OpenAI, they decide to create something which is similar, that purpose is no longer existing, and the technology is defunct because it's already been absorbed. So
Yeah.
that's really quite. When you say it, it's quite obvious how you've gone through it. Now, I
Mm.
mentioned earlier that I saw computer vision about a few years ago. It was being
Yeah.
used in news in particular, whereby you were able, I don't know whether you consider this computer vision, but the news journalists were able to find clips to support whatever it is that they were reporting on, and they were able to fill out their stories quite nice and easily. There was also cases where you could they only had pictures at this point. They hadn't had moving pictures, but from a still image, they could determine what the people were likely doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was mind blowing. And that was about 5 years ago. Where have we reached since then? And where do you think we're going to go? Because
So this is a really interesting thing because if you were a practitioner and you were very honest with yourself, you would probably say that it hasn't changed at all. And the way that I would think about it is this. Let's say I had a picture where, let's say I was being interviewed. So I was standing in front of a TV, it's got my name there. And then behind me in the black background that is slightly blurred, right, to kind of be a nice background for me, two guys start to fight. They start to beat each other up like violently in the background. And you take that video and you send it to an AI system. AI system in almost every case until maybe 3 months ago would just say, this is an image of an interview with an exciting background. Whereas a human would say, the thing that is really happening is that there is a fight going on, right? And the guy in front is now the background for the fight that's going on behind him. And a big part of that is because the behavior algorithms are largely what is called a classification algorithm. And a classification algorithm, and the way to think about AI is that AI can be kind of split, or these deep learning AI kind of split into two models. One is to detect and one is to classify. A detection model says, is there a is there one of these 50 things in this image? That's a detection model. And it often comes out with the answer, none of these 50 things are in the image. A classification model is the opposite. Classification model says, here are 50 options, MCQ, multiple choice question, right? Here are the 50 questions. Here's the image. You have to choose an answer. The reason that is, with a model like that, it will definitely take the most significant thing in that image and make that the answer. This is a big part. This is a problem that so in my business, this is the unsolved part of the question, actually. Because in a CCTV camera and in real life, and if imagine if you were planning out what's happening in the world with now your robots and all of this stuff, you're not always looking at the big thing. You're looking at the context and the richness of activity that is happening. The problem that we have right now is that almost all AI is trained on YouTube videos. Now, YouTube videos have something very important that the world does not always have. It has a director and a cameraman. And a director and a cameraman means there is an implicit intent of what the purpose of that video is. And so that is the reason why if you type into ChatGPT something like, I want to see an exciting, a busy airport, it's going to show you an image of what like a YouTuber would say, this is a busy airport. It is not going to show you rigid, scary, busy airport, which is kind of what you really want, right? Which is all the different parts going on and something interesting happening. It's not there. And that's a limitation that it cannot be solved immediately right now without many more things happening.
But this all brings up this whole because there's always, whenever you're talking about photography, there's a lot of privacy issues. Where Arjun is in the UAE, there are strict laws on photography, and videography is even more sensitive. How do you address those kind of issues? Specifically, I'm in the European Union. There's EU GDPR on data. You're collecting significant amount of data on people's body shapes and forms, etc., etc., etc. How are you addressing those, or are you addressing those at this moment?
So I think there's two ways to answer this question. So one is I can tell you what we are doing, and the answer of what we are doing is we capture no biometric from the beginning. So, for example, if I'm taking a photo of you, there are two things that you can do, right? So let's say if I take a photo of you, one is I can take your whole image, so that's including your very good-looking shirt that you have on today and all of your other clothing. I can combine that into a single image and say, this is the feature of Stephen that I'm using today. And this is what we do. And the reason why we do that is because if tomorrow you come in with a different search, with a different shirt on and a different pants on, or even wearing it different, there may be your belt's a bit lower, it's a different person to that image because it's matching all of you against all of you. The second thing you could have done is we could have said, let's do that, but we can also do facial recognition. Facial recognition has a problem. The facial recognition key is a transferable identity of your face. It is much more unlikely for you to change what your face looks like than what it is to change what the rest of your body looks like. And I have tried this myself just to terrorize myself, just to give myself, like night sweats a little bit. I copy and pasted the facial recognition from one of my cheapo little cameras into a different into my own PC. So essentially, I hacked my lousy Chinese camera, a facial recognition door thing. I took out the facial encoding and put it in my PC, and my PC could recognize me immediately, which essentially means not only is it a key, it's a stealable, transferable key. Your privacy is gone once that thing is created, right? And so we're like, let's not even build those components in. It's built in such a way that at every stage of the system, there is transparency on the information that we capture, the way that we use it, the way we encode it, the way that we transfer it, and the way that we connect it with other information. That's kind of the way that we do things. I think there's a bigger question that we also need to look at very briefly, and that is, you look at ChatGPT today, we often talk about how ChatGPT has a problem with trademarks. So if I type in, when ChatGPT first came out, one of the famous things that people used to do is they would say, make a video like a Studio Gilby image, right? And then it looks like a Studio Gilby image. And the word Studio Gilby was built into the model. There's no way to get rid of that. You can hide it. You can have a little prompt that says, if Studio Gilby is in prompt, then remove it and say Queen Japanese animation or something like that. But you can't really get rid of it unless you had gotten rid of it at the training data level. It had never entered the system. One of the things that we believe is that with a lot of decision making and computer vision data today, like I said, now it's trained on CCTV, it's trained on YouTube videos. Now, once you start to train it on the rest of the world to create understanding videos that can be used to, for example, command and control embedded AI robots and so on, which will live in the real world and not in the YouTube video world, this information hasn't been trained on yet because it doesn't really exist yet. Which means that we once again are at that crossroad where we can choose to eliminate Studio Gilby and all of our identities and all the branding on our cars from the training data. And we're kind of at that point again. So we probably have only like a couple more chances before AI kind of takes over the world.
So hopefully the regulators will take note. We're almost at the end. Arjun, do we have any last questions?
So now that you're in Singapore and in the US and possibly in Australia to appear to be in front of your growth strategy, are there any other regions you guys are exploring to kind of expand out the technology to?
So the interesting thing about technology is that we work with property managers and property owners. And
Mhm.
property managers and property owners, the way to think about it is the tracking systems works best in a jurisdiction, and the best jurisdiction is a big owned location, which is a big building. So property owners make a lot of sense. And so the thing about property owners is that almost every property owner is cross-border in nature. And so our expansion has been very organic, right? So Jones Lang LaSalle and CBRE, two property managers as people who are using our technology. CBRE starts in Singapore and they expand westward. Their HQ is in India, and so they're going westward direction. JLL, Southeast Asia practice is in Hong Kong, and so they're moving northward with it. And so we have work happening in Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia and Indonesia, and it kind of expands out that way. And in the US, in the same way, we just signed, for example, our first partner in Canada. Yeah, so it's an interesting space.
Mabruk. That's congratulations. Which, although I'm in the UK now, I keep slipping a little bit into Arabic, and for no reason at all. That sounds like a good way of finishing for today. Thank you very much indeed, Galvin. Arjun, do you want to close us down?
Once again, Galvin, as Steve said, thank you so much for joining us and kind of sharing in your experience and giving us more insights on to Loretta. So, thank you once again for joining us. And this is Stephen King and myself, Arjun Radish, signing off.